When most people get their paycheck, they have zero idea as to what they should be doing with the money. Needless to say, school never taught us about financial literacy, and in most cases, your parents didn't either. In fact, your parents may be in a difficult financial situation too. About 40% of Americans can't afford to pay a $400 emergency expense. We know that this isn't really shocking, but it is disturbing. It's sad to think that an unexpected $400 could ruin someone's finances. Now we know that if you're watching this video, then you might be one of those indecisive folks that don't know how to stash their cash. Lucky for you, we're here to help. Stick through the end of this video to learn the steps you need in order to make sure that you're prepared for those unexpected costs and for your future. Number 1. Retirement Fund. The only thing worse than dying is running out of money before you die. True to this quote, yes, we'd rather be alive for sure. But wouldn't it be a struggle to be alive but barely getting the most out of it because you can't financially support yourself? In most cases, your employer will have an option for a retirement plan, such as a 401k plan that will put away part of your check before it even hits your bank account. This means you won't see any of this money, but it is an essential part of building up your savings. This gives you a safety net for when you have retired from the workforce. It is essential to start saving for retirement as early as possible. You may be in your 20s right now, but the sooner you start putting aside for retirement and saving, the better off you will be, and the more wealth you will have amassed. You can put away 5 to 15% of your money before you even see your paycheck, and this will give you a head start on the retirement game. Too frequently, people do not have enough money saved up for their retirement. Let's talk about the next one, which is after that money gets shaved off for your retirement plan. That is when it goes into our checking account. Number 2. Checking account. Your checking account is the hub where all of the important steps will take place. This is usually where people call it good and don't take their savings a step further. Your checking account can either be where good intentions go to die, or it can be the go-between you and a better future. So our paycheck goes into our checking account. This is as far as most people get. They get to the checking account, and then they pay their credit cards and pay everything out of it, and that's essentially their savings. They basically don't have anything past that. However, you should have things coming out of your checking account in 2 different areas. Now listen closely, for this is the important part. You can have automatic withdrawals into various different IDs or bank accounts. Automatic withdrawals into other accounts are a great option to achieve financial goals as quickly and as painlessly as possible. The next one is very important, but this is essentially paying for your necessities. Number 3. Necessities. Necessities are the bare bones of what you need to survive. These costs are what keep you off the streets and keep you alive. This is not your daily Starbucks or your Netflix account. We're talking about food, shelter, transportation, healthcare, utilities, and more. You have to understand the difference between needs and wants at this step. Ask yourself if you should pay for McDonald's or figure out how to cut back on food. Should you get a Netflix premium account, or should you just use that money on rent? It is essential that you can recognize what keeps you alive in order to better understand the areas where you can cut back. Understand your necessities and pay for them as quickly as possible when you get your check. On top of this, you might want to consider paying those minimum payments as well. We're talking about your cards, but we'll get into that in a minute. Next, this is just as essential, and that is your emergency fund. Number 4. Emergency fund. Everyone should have an emergency fund, whether you have $1 million in your bank account or a negative $100,000 to your name. Having an emergency fund is one of the first steps in alleviating some of your financial burdens. Remember that fact that we threw out earlier, that 40% of Americans can afford an unexpected $400 emergency expense? This is where your emergency fund comes in. Having an emergency fund is going to be one of the first steps to relieve some of the financial stress that you would have otherwise. It's wise to have somewhere between $1,000 and $10,000 saved for emergencies. You can easily take steps toward reaching this financial goal by taking anywhere as little as $10 out of each paycheck to place in a separate account that's strictly for your emergency fund. You want this account to be as accessible as possible. This fund could cover anything from unexpected medical bills to needing some work done on your car. The best steps you can take to create an emergency fund is to build it up little by little over time. This emergency fund will be even more important than paying down your debts. Now let's get to number 5, and that's paying off your debt. Now once you build that emergency fund and when you get a little bit on your feet, you might want to consider how to pay off your debt. There are multiple ways to do this, depending on what type of person you are or depending on how much debt you have. Now there's two different strategies for actually paying off your debt. First is the snowball method. This method is particularly good for people who struggle to stay motivated to pay off debt and have difficulty with making debt payments. With this method, you tackle the debt you have with the lowest balance first. This is regardless of the interest rate. Then you move to the next debt with the lowest balance and keep going until you have paid them all off. This strategy can keep you motivated and give you a sense of financial accomplishment. Another idea is what we call the avalanche method. This method of paying off your debt logically makes more sense, and usually it will actually save you more money. However, this will depend on your situation whether this method of debt payoff is right for you. This method gets you to tackle the debt with the highest interest rate. You pay off the debt with the highest interest rate first, but you are still irradiating each debt one at a time. You still need to make sure that you are paying the minimum payments for all your other debts though. Our next step is probably going to be the most enjoyable step of this entire process, and that is by saving up at least 4 to 8 months of payroll. Number 6. 4 to 8 months payroll. Let us give you an example. Bill Gates, when he founded Microsoft, he found that he was struggling to please investors. In some cases, investors would be putting a lot of pressure on him. So what he did, he saved up enough cash in Microsoft so that he could pay all of his employees for an entire year. He had a year's payroll on hand that he's able to pay all of his employees if the company wasn't making any money. The reason for this is that he realized that there would be times where they'll put out a product that's not as great as they thought it would be. But even then, he's still gonna be able to pay his employees. What you must take from that is that this step is your ultimate safety net. This is a preparation method for extreme circumstances, such as losing your job. It's important to have enough money to live off for several months set aside because there is no guarantee of what the future holds. This can be easily achieved in an online savings account. You want to put it in an account that keeps up with inflation but is also very steady. You don't want any risk associated with these savings. You want these savings to be accessible without being too close to your fingertips because you want to keep it stored away. This payroll safety net, as I like to call it, is what will allow you peace of mind if anything were to happen. Now let's go to our last step, which is investing. This step is how you get your money to work for you. Investing is what could potentially make you rich. These investments could be real estate, stocks, bonds, and more. However, there are a lot of steps that come before this, and this can be a back burner item until you take care of your other financial situations. Although you can start investing with any amount of money, and I wouldn't recommend holding off on investing for too long. You want to get the most bang for your buck. Educating yourself and organizing your finances is one of the greatest acts of self-care you can do for yourself. It's important to recognize the importance of these steps for your future. It is never too late to start setting financial goals and taking actionable steps to reach them, even if you feel like you're drowning in debt and you'll never see the light of day again. The most important thing you can do is to get a good understanding of your financial situation and take the appropriate steps from there. If you found this video helpful, then please hit the like and subscribe button, and also consider turning on post notifications to be updated on our new stuff. Until then, we'll see you in the next video.